screams to all of the family that are gathered in front of him. He screams, "No, it's not me." Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Digital Download. The Digital Download is the longest running weekly talk show on LinkedIn Live. The longest running business weekly talk show. Probably the longest running talk show on LinkedIn. Probably the only long running talk show on LinkedIn Live. Anyway, this week we are talking about mental health in sales. Sales is a tough industry, a tough job for people to do. There's no secret in that. It's fraught with rejections. Your longevity in a role is based on what you do today, not what you did yesterday. So a successful Q3 doesn't necessarily mean that you will have a job after Q4. This is a tough way to live your life, isn't it? Constantly a string of hello, can I just have a couple of minutes of your time? No, you can't. Oh, this countless stonewalling, no's, feeling that people don't want to talk to you. No wonder breakdowns, addiction, burnout, depression, low self-esteem are all rife amongst salespeople. So against this background, how is it possible that anyone is able to maintain a decent life balance in sales? And is there anything that we can do to change that? So that's going to be the topic of discussion today. But before we do any of that, let's go around and introduce ourselves. So first of all, to you, Jensen.
Hi all, I'm Jensen Abbott. I work at Supero, and I'm a proud, happy DNA associate.
Alex.
Hello all, Alex Abbott, founder at Supero and happy and healthy DLA partner.
William.
Hello all. Yeah, William Shorten. I'm an associate with DLA Ignite, and I also run my own consultancy, William Shorten Learning Solutions.
Jordan.
Hello, I am Jordan Abbott, B2B social influence and interaction advisor at Supero. That's a mouthful. And I'm also a happy and healthy DLA Ignite partner.
Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm feeling very good today. Very happy. Yeah, thank you.
And as always, saving the best till last, Tracy.
Because I always squeak in because it's only 7 a.m. for me.
Fair.
Hey everybody, I'm Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, and I am a super duper enthusiastic DLA Ignite partner. Woo! I prepped that one.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously, I gave an intro about how sales is a tough job, and everyone's understandably quite miserable when they're in sales, and stressed and suffering from all of these kind of anxieties and things. But what's really interesting, because we all have kind of either completely or partially sales roles, what's really interesting is that everybody began by saying, I'm a happy and fulfilled and delighted DLA Ignite proud partner. So you guys are not the norm from this perspective. So before we get into why you're not the norm, tell me about your experiences of being unhappy in sales. Who would like to share something? And why were you unhappy in sales?
I had to bloody cold call. No, I'm kidding. But you know, I'm actually not really kidding. So, as many might know, we acted as an outsourced sales agency at one point, and we were juggling many clients, and was sort of. It was a case of the client said jump and we said how high. And there was a real lack of job fulfillment, I think, because we were bought in as much as we possibly could be. But there was a sort of lack of, I want to say belief, potentially. I know having a strong belief system is something that Alex and I have spoken about at length. And I think that was lacking for me during that period. So yeah, I was vastly unhappy.
So did you see that as being unhappiness when you were in that role, or did you just think it just comes with the territory? Did you believe that there were greener pastures just over the next hill?
That's a great question. I don't know. I felt like I was very much caught in the hamster wheel. So to be able to lift my head and actually see greener pastures was tough. So yeah, I don't know whether I did believe there were greener pastures.
But what's changed? Because you're talking about your unhappiness in the past tense.
Yeah. I think it's just being able to have joy within the work and being able to honor my passions of creativity. I think it was very monotonous previously, whereas now, you know, every day's different and I've got the control to make every day different, which is exciting.
So just checking, Jordan, you're not cold calling anymore?
Nope.
So you moved out of sales, or what's
no? Still in sales. I just talk with people in a very solicited manner. You know,
okay.
Building mutual relationships rather than hammering the door down. Or,
okay.
You know, hammering the phone down.
So how about you, Jensen? Because you're always smiling. So you're not too miserable with your lot in life.
Yeah.
So what has how were things for you, and how are they now?
How are things for me? Okay, being totally transparent, I would say I thought things were awful. I thought the job was awful. I didn't think I was the right person for the job. Through rejection, through doing the activities that needed to be done, but seeing no return on that, no one wanting to speak to me, you start to kind of question yourself. And like Jordan said, kind of your belief goes downhill. So then it's like trying to say win a football match when you already know you're going to lose it. It's disheartening. Yeah. So, I mean, what's changed really is, like Jordan said, I'm not forced into a box and being told to just call or email. I'm allowed the space to be creative and let my creative juices come through and create content that other people enjoy, but also that I enjoy. I'm not being pushy with anyone, so I'm not trying to force people to read my content or anything like that. Like Jordan said, I'm completely just open to having a conversation, finding out more about the other person, and just building those relationships. And I've felt that I've been able to be myself a lot more. I'm happier when I'm talking to potential prospects or anyone really on LinkedIn. It's more enjoyable for me, and I'm sure it's more enjoyable for them.
But what does that look like in terms of success? Because it's one thing to spend your time doing stuff you love, and it's something else entirely to spend your time doing something you love and being successful. So previously you were doing something you hated. The payback must have been that you were getting massive results for that. Otherwise, surely that's a grim existence, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm able to have a lot more conversations with a lot more people and people that are higher up within organizations. And that's something that I was never able to do at the start of my sales career, kind of having me reach out, them knowing that I'm trying to sell them something. I don't get given the time of day, or maybe because I'm very young and I don't have the experience or expertise, where changing my mindset, and which does take time. It's not easy. Changing my mindset and the activities that I do within the day, to then be able to have these types of conversations with these people, and not just that, them reaching out to me to ask questions about the content I post. That's where kind of the real sense of purpose comes from, because now I know that people want to absorb in my content. two, it resonates with them because they're asking me questions around that. So that's where I'm then happy, as I have those people that are now talking to me and willing to give me time to have a conversation.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. But obviously we've got you guys that have spoken are young and relatively new to sales. We've got two people that are old and have been in sales for donkey's years. So, kind of, what have your experience? What have your experiences?
What is donkey's years?
Just two?
What is donkey's years?
A long time, a long time. So Alex, how has this changed for you? Because you both cut your teeth selling the old way, and maybe when you started your careers in sales, that was the de facto way to sell, the only way to sell, and it was effective. Because clearly, you don't build a whole industry on doing something if that thing doesn't work. But both of you have probably seen a big shift, haven't you?
Yeah. Who wants to go first? Do you want me to answer, Tim, or do you want to?
Sorry, I don't define myself as old, so.
Okay, I'll go then. I think so. There's a few thoughts in my mind because you started off, Adam, asking the question about kind of what was it like before? What were the worst times? And I've had some pretty awful experiences in sales. From a CEO at a company saying, what are you doing? After giving me like a scolding because there was a pause in the conversation, to which I replied, well, I'm thinking about whether or not I want to be here. and losing my job in 2005, hitting kind of a depressed state around 2006-07, not knowing what it was, just my body shutting down. As a result, I think, of just the pressure of sales, the anxiety build up and what have you.
So what form did that pressure take? Because obviously you've got your organization, which is setting you targets which are going to stretch you or be unrealistic. But is that the only pressure that you had?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was the pressure I put on myself, wanting to do well. But a lot of the pressure was from, the people around me, my manager and my manager's manager. And so, I think if hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? So if I look back now, what I didn't have was a clearly defined, pathway, a clearly defined set of activities or behaviors that I could do on a daily basis, knowing that I was making progress, even if it was just one small step after the other. And it was more about, well, here's your number. You need to hit your target. Why aren't you hitting the phones? Why aren't you sending messages? Now I was able to find a system under that pressure myself, but it wasn't fun getting to that point. But once I did, I realized, well, okay, now I know what to do. It doesn't matter who my manager is. I know what I need to do to be successful. And I have to say, even back in those days, in 2007, I didn't believe in cold calling. 2007. So what's that? 15 years ago. And LinkedIn was the tool for me. LinkedIn and email back then. I think, nowadays, for many years, I was a big believer again in kind of defining what those behaviors are. And as a sales leader, making sure that my team had clarity on what those things were. So they had that guiding light. So, they felt a sense of, well, I know what I need to do. I'm part of a a team with a winning mentality, and we were all kind of working together. But not every team or company has that, I don't think. And I'd say, in the last few years, in the last, 15, 18 months since, myself, Jordan and Jensen started the journey with DLA Ignite, having gone through the pain of being an outsource agency, thinking we needed to do cold outreach the traditional way to help make our clients successful, even though, I didn't believe in it myself many years ago. We went through that pain again. We all felt it together, despite how good we thought we could be. And so sort of 15 months ago, when we started the social selling journey, it was, I kind of felt it was the right thing to do. I knew it was the right thing to do because LinkedIn has been a powerful tool for me for many years anyway. But B, you and I worked together briefly, Adam, 7, 8 years ago at Oracle, and you gave me some tips then that never left me. So I kind of knew it was the right thing to do. And then as we started on that journey, we just developed, continued to develop month on month together. And the three of us felt a real sense of belonging, that we were doing something that was not only great for us, but great for our business. And we started to see great results from it.
I was having a conversation with Jordan the other day, and I'll paraphrase. He basically said he hated his job because it was full of rejection. He would spend all of his time having people effectively put the phone down on him. And now he spends over half of his time having calls with people that are actually prepared to talk to him. And he said to me something which was quite profound, which was, how could you not like that? You're spending all of your time talking to people that you've not spoken to before and having a conversation with them. And I think that sales can be a very solitary job, can't it? Yeah, you have a team. Yeah, you have a sales manager, but actually your day-to-day working is not a team effort. It's a solo effort. You're doing this cold outreach. And I've never been entirely a salesperson. There's always been an element of sales in what I've done, but I've never been entirely a salesperson. And that must be heartbreaking when you're really good at doing stuff, but nobody wants to have a conversation with you. You've got the best product, the best service. It can help the client, but nobody wants to talk to you. You haven't got anything which will facilitate the start of a conversation with somebody, because everything you say is something that they've heard before. I've got something which will absolutely help you with this problem. Yeah, I don't believe you. Goodbye. And to be able to turn that narrative on its head must be a healthier way to exist.
No, just to go on from what you were saying then, Alex. One of the things that we spoke about a lot in the early days was lag measures versus lead measures. And I understood the concept at the time, but I didn't really believe in it because, as you said, it was just constant rejection. So I was like, well, we're putting these lead measures in place, but it's not working. And, since making that transition, reporting religiously, we've now, I now fully believe in lead measures and their ability to move us forward, and while ensuring that you're not just focusing on that inflated target. It's okay, breaking it down into steps. This is how I'm going to get there.
Yeah, and I often use the football analogy when describing the lead measures to you boys, which is because obviously you both play football. It's not just how many shots on goal you can have; it's how many times you can pass the ball forward to the midfield, and keep doing it. Keep doing it. It's the right thing to do. That behaviour will result in the striker getting the ball and having a shot on goal. And it's exactly the same, but a lot of salespeople don't know what those things are. Passing the ball forward, or they've done it so many times and it's not worked. They've lost belief in doing it, and so I think having those lead measures along with the reporting, and it's measuring the right things, not the wrong things. So measuring the lead measures, not just the lag measures. that gives us the insight to then have more effective conversations, coaching conversations about how to improve. You know, how you can be more accurate with that pass to midfield or to the striker.
And I think that plays into what Andrew shared in the comments about we can be shown how to do the work, but then when it doesn't work out, are we just I think this really plays into the mental health piece, right? Are we just supposed to assume we're bad at this, right? Like, I'm bad at sales, and anybody who thinks that going into a day, whether you're like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a different perspective on sales as well, because if you don't sell, you don't make money. You don't get a base salary. But how does that play into our thoughts, right? All those times when we're like, man, I just can't get the ball forward. I can't get the ball forward. I can't get the ball forward. And after X amount of days, this kind of ties into, Jackie had a question too about how do you detach from the stresses when you're at home? Like, that mindset goes with you when you go home, right? Yeah. So unless there's, I mean, it's one thing to have the practices in place that can help you maintain that good state of mental health, but I think it's important to realize what's happening, right? Like, what are my narratives about my job that are creating a mental health crisis in sales? And where can I get the help, right? I was actually talking to a sales rep yesterday, and she was like, I love sales. I love the competition of it, right? And I see the board up, and it's like a group sales team, right? I see the board and I see I lost, or I see I won. And I'm like, it's kind of good, but at the same time, like, how does that play on your mental health, right? Like, you're constantly competing against your team. And I always compare it to, like, I used to play competitive basketball. If I play against the members of my team, we don't win, right? That's not how you win the game. You win the game by, as a team, having a goal and us going there together, and I play my role and you play your role and you play your role, which I actually think is one of the coolest things about the DLA team, because, like, all of us show up differently, right? We're not trying to do the same thing. We don't have the same script. We're just, like, out there doing it the way we would do it. And therefore we speak to different people. And therefore, as a whole, more people get to receive the message. So I think there's this, like, sales team component that's kind of been, I get gamification, right? Like, in our brain, but at the same time, like, what does that do on the mental health side?
So I learned, I started selling about 1,000 years ago.
Donkey's years.
Donkey's years ago, yeah. It was a world. Now, you may not believe it, but the internet didn't exist. We actually, email didn't exist. We sent letters to people.
Was the fax machine invented?
Sorry?
Was the fax machine invented, or was it before then?
It was before then. Emails.
You're not that old, Tim. Come on.
My first selling job.
He used to carve messages into tablets of stone.
I did.
No.
My first selling job, it was at a company who were a bit behind with the technology, and I actually had to write letters out on a pad and take them to the typing pool. But cold calling was brilliant. And the reason for that was that the only way that you got information as a buyer was by people ringing you up. So actually, when we cold called people saw you as a person that was going to give, what's going on in the marketplace, what are the things, and the same with events. Events was a place where you went to find out what was going on. And then, of course, the internet brought that all to a halt. Now, the thing about me that I found, and which is a small piece about mental health, was burnout. Because in my 20s, what I wanted to do was I was building a career. I still wasn't sure whether sales was right for me, but I basically was working 80, 100 hours a week. And I remember going with my partner at the time into a shoe shop in Birmingham. We were living in Solihull. And you know, when you go into a shoe shop, when women buy shoes, there's always the seats for the men to sit on. And I sat down and I first fell asleep. And I would do that. And I actually did a podcast this week, and I got the figures that 52% of workforce experience burnout and 53% of managers experience burnout. But my point being, we live in a world where I may be an example of someone who is a leader. So I grew up in a world where cold calling was easy, whereas you're all saying cold calling is difficult. So we may actually have this imbalance where leadership think, actually, it's easy, just ring people up. They want to hear from you. Where actually that's not actually what's happened, because things have actually moved on. Yeah. So that's kind of my point. I mean, I know that things have moved on. I mean, I'm world famous for something. And I just think that we sometimes, there was a point, was it Sean said, this is linked to leadership with the business and providing support and network of robust mentorship available. 100%. Absolutely wonderful point, Sean. Leadership have to show support. And if your team are being rejected, just to turn around and say, suck it up, this is sales. I don't think that's, and I see a lot of that in the States. You don't, so Tracy, the leaderboard in you were talking about, you can't do that in Europe because of employee regulations. You'll basically get taken to tribunal. There's certain things that support you. But I still don't think people are realizing that this is happening. It's all suck it up, it's cold calling, get on with it. And that's partly because people are not looking around and seeing that there's alternatives. And they're not providing the support. I mean, you go to any SDR on LinkedIn and look, and they'll be somewhere for 9 months, then for 6 months, then for 9 months, and I bet it's not because they can't, it's because they can't sell. It's because they're not getting support.
And I think it brings a broader point in sales. I mean, I worked in sales for 8 years and then went to purchasing. And I certainly found purchasing easier than being in sales. But I think it depends as well what type of sales you're in. I was in a really small market, very bespoke market. It was all about relationships anyway. So there wasn't any cold calling. There were only probably globally, 30, possible buyers worldwide. So it was a very small market, very specialized. So it was all around kind of relationships and the product. But I mean, I found when I suffered stress in that, it was due to conflict. And I had a challenge with how I handled kind of conflict. And I think there's something, because, sales is a very people-focused area. And actually, I think probably quite a strong driver in a lot of salespeople is they like to be liked. Yes. They want that relationship, they want to be bought. And therefore, if you do get rejected or you do get into conflict, then that's what's going to kind of heighten anxiety, because it's a very people-focused area and there's a lot of people there. And when you work with people, then, there is a tendency that there is going to be conflict because you're not going to agree all of the time.
But you said about being sales is a people-focused industry, and salespeople are people and they want to be liked. The challenge with the old methodology is that they don't ever get any of that. So I get all of the team stuff. It's really important that you have good teammates. It's really important that you're part of a family. But actually, when you get on with doing your job, the selling bit, what you don't get is any of those people interactions. What you constantly get is that rebuttal that I'd like to just have a quick conversation. I haven't got time, not interested. No, thank you. We're not interested. We're not buying. Whatever it is that and you get that told that again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And that becomes a pattern, doesn't it? That's the point, that the fact that you've got a supportive boss, and not what Tim was saying, if you've got a supportive boss that says, okay, let's try to find another way to tackle this problem because that isn't working. But if you've got a supportive boss that just puts their arm around you and says, never mind, tomorrow will be better. Well, tomorrow won't be better. Because actually, this is not about the 4 interactions you had today. This is about every interaction that you're ever going to have through that methodology for selling stuff. And I've seen even successful salespeople that were really miserable, were fighting addiction, or depression or had whatever mental health issues that they were suffering from under the weight of stress, not the stress of achieving their number, because they were outperforming a lot of the time, the stress of the fact that the daily grind of what they had to do was something that was so horrific that they couldn't bear it.
And I think there's something that I'm thinking about here when we talk about like supporting people, right? Because I don't think just putting your arm around someone and being like, it's okay, it'll be better tomorrow is helpful, right? Like that doesn't help me do anything differently tomorrow. That would tell me tomorrow's going to feel different than today. I think that there is a growth mindset that is required in sales to say, like, you might work in an industry where cold calling works, right? I don't know which industry that is, but like, go to town, right? If it's working for you and you have fun doing it and you have a product you love to sell, right? Like, go with it. But I think a lot of those like daily doldrums come from things like, I don't feel connected to what I'm selling. Right? Well, that's something a leader can help you to do. Find your voice in the product, right? Why did you come to work here? What do you like about this? How do you think it can help people? Instead of giving someone a script that's like, oh, this worked for me, so it'll work for you. And like, just keep doing it. You'll get it, right? Like, no, some of the behind the scenes processes are broken. People need to feel that connection to what they're doing. They need to get excited about going to work. And when I was talking to that sales rep yesterday, we were talking about wins and losses, right? And I was like, at this point, and I have a unique relationship with sales because I started in sales in client success. So we already had clients and my job was just to upsell them, right? So to me, sales has always been like, look for a problem, fix the problem, and then charge people for it. Like, this is what it costs. Let's get this part fixed for you. And people were always like, oh, yeah, great. Because we have that relationship already. So I already knew this was about relationships. So coming into my own business, I was like, I got to build the relationships, right? People don't know me for this. I got to build the relationships. And every single conversation I have with a person is a win to me. I don't feel like this is a loss because I had a chat with you and you're not going to buy something today, right? Like, I never feel that. I don't feel like there's losses. But when we're like measuring wins and losses, then you could even get this fake belief that now there's losses. Well, if I'm building a relationship with a person, that's not a loss, right? Like, that might go into a different category. It might go into a longer nurturing process, but like, it's not a loss. And I feel like even if they're like, yeah, no, this isn't something I need right now, like, the effort I put into building a relationship with that person isn't a loss. So I think these are some of the things too, that if people are experiencing a lot of no's, right? Like, I'm sure all of us get a lot of people who are like, I actually mostly get people who ignore me, right? So like, I'll ask them to have a call and they're say nothing, right? And that's fine, right? But like, you could define that as a loss, right? Like, I asked 25 people to have calls this week and 10 people said yes. So that means 15 people said no. And like, more people said no than said yes, right? But I had 10 people who said yes. And I also had 10 conversations that were really meaningful, right? Like, I think it's just maybe not necessarily switching the numbers, but reframing the numbers so that people can get excited about what they've done to that point and instead of being like, oh, all that work was for nothing.
So how can
quality as well as quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how can this help a salesperson that is unhappy in what they're doing? Because, you know, it's a job in an industry that is riven with people problems. You know, people are unhappy, people are stressed, people are suffering from burnout. You know, we all had that to a greater or lesser extent.
Just so there's,
Go on, Alex. You've been trying to jump in for about 20 minutes.
Just quickly, because there's lots of really good stuff being said. And on the run up to the show today, I was doing a bit of research and I came across this really interesting report called The State of Mental Health in Sales for 2022. It was created in November. So it's kind of like, you know, for the period of 2022. and they compared how salespeople felt from 21 to 22. And it's quite, it's getting worse. So 63% of salespeople are struggling with their mental health, which is up 5%.
So 2/3 of people in sales are struggling with mental health issues.
Yeah. And that is typically SDRs, account execs, business development, sales managers, leadership. That's jumped from something like 43% to 60% of sales leadership are struggling with mental health in 2022. And the biggest reasons, the top 2 reasons, so in second place, it's missing target. So of everybody surveyed, I think there was like 700 people surveyed, 40.6% say for missing target. And I think, and the number 1 is micromanagement. So I think cold calling is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th on the list. But the point I'm about to make now, which I think is the most important point, is the reason salespeople are missing target. There's a number of reasons, but one of the biggest for me is the traditional techniques don't work anymore. Buyer behavior has changed significantly, yet managers try and solve the problem by micromanaging, which is the number 1 cause of mental health issues, as opposed to being more supportive, shining the light on the pathway to being successful as individuals, and empowering them to do things that actually do deliver results, like what I think you were getting to, Adam, in terms of the journey that we've made recently from that, that switch from traditional techniques, sales techniques that no longer work, to modern social selling strategies. And I think, if companies, wake up to that and start doing that, they're more likely to hit their number. There's less need to micromanage. I mean, and then there's a leadership, sales leadership challenge in itself there.
Well, you said that a good sales leader, their job is to shine a light on the path to success. And Tim made the point earlier where he said, if I were a typical sales leader, when I began my sales career, cold calling, not only did it work, it was positively enjoyable because I was getting to talk to people.
It's good fun.
So given that's, if you had become a normal sales leader, that would be your view of the world. Cold calling works. It worked for me. It's great fun. There's no reason for you to be miserable if you're cold calling people, because actually I found a great deal of joy in it and I'm no different to you. So that's the basis on which sales leaders are handing out, in quotes, advice to their sales teams about how they can be more effective and more fulfilled and more successful.
I think a leadership position can quite often say that the cold calling, their mental view on the world is that it's fun.
Though the other day I saw a sales leader share a post that was along the lines of, if you haven't pissed 3 people off by lunchtime, you're not cold calling enough. So then it's like, well, so now they're wearing that annoying prospect as a badge of honor, which
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think too, does what this comes back to the growth mindset for me, right? Because it worked and it was fun for a person doesn't mean it's going to work and be fun for all people, right? So if you are really looking at your target, again, this is the thing that always boggles my mind. If the target is the most important thing, then wouldn't you do whatever you can to reach the target, right? Like micromanaging tasks that don't work, it's not doing everything you can to reach the target, right? There's something that's not working here. How curious are we getting about that as sales leaders and as entrepreneurs too, in our own processes, right? I'm doing all of this, it isn't working. Just keeping doing it is making me feel like this. So how can I get outside the box?
you know, it's like every time you've lost something in your house and you look for it, it's always in the last place you look. And the reason it's in the last place you look is because you don't keep looking when you know when you found it. And that's the issue here, isn't it? That sales leaders know what the answer is. They know what the answer is because they have personal experience of the answer. And the problem with that is that they are handing out advice based on the fact that they don't know what the correct solution to this is. You know, clearly the reason that you, Tracy, are not selling enough stuff is because you're not phoning enough people. So hit the phones harder. But no one's answering my phone.
It's predicated on the basis of what brought them success in the past. So they're only giving that advice because they're trying to be helpful, and they're trying to say, well, this worked for me, so it's going to work for you now in a different era, in a different context.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Will. And I think that so going back to, I think what some of the people are saying, I was on a podcast with Eric Stein from Skillsoft last week, and his view was that from a leadership position, you know, if you go out to the marketplace and you find a salesperson and you take them on, then it is your responsibility as a leader, if they're not being successful, to actually say to the salesperson, what is it that myself that is doing wrong, not you? Because we as a leader should have brought, we saw you as the best person. There's going to be a structure, there's going to be whatever it is to support you. It's not you that's at fault, it's us that's at fault.
But how many leaders say that? You know, that shows incredible open-mindedness and bravery to say that. And that's actually not generally the way corporate structure works, is it? What normally happens is you're not it's about pointing the finger for who's at fault rather than saying, actually, I own this because I'm the leader. I need to make this better. How often have you ever experienced that, either in your work or now when we engage with hundreds of companies? I mean, it's a rarity. Yeah, exactly. You know, you can literally count on the fingers of one hand the number of times that you've met somebody and they've said, this thing that we're doing, that I've been employed to do, it's not working. You know, literally the number of fingers on one hand.
I spoke to someone.
And it's hard for those people too, right? Because that was me, right? Like I came in as like a temporary VP of sales, and I looked at the results and the KPIs and what people were tracking and all of these things, and the mental health, like seriously, severe anxiety in some of these salespeople. And I'm like, this doesn't work. I don't know what part of it doesn't work, but like it clearly doesn't work as a group, right? So like, let's explore what we could do differently. But I guess that's just it, right? Like how many people are saying, let's explore what we could do differently? Because quite honestly, we were at the point where we could do literally anything else. Probably we could do nothing in a week and have the same results, right? So like, it doesn't hurt us to try something different for a week or for 2 weeks, right? And I think something that's like coming up for me here too is like, how much of this is a leader? Like how much do we have to look at from a leadership perspective? And then also how can we, assuming we don't have leadership support, do something to maintain our own mental health in a state of fixed mindset pressure versus helpfulness?
Yeah, and I think just additionally, you touched on growth mindset a little while ago, Tracy. I think there's a really fine balance. So obviously, sales people should be accountable for their actions to an extent, right? And self-awareness is a crucial skill for life, right? Generally, to grow and become better. But I think there's a really fine line between self-awareness and self-consciousness, right? But one that has huge impact. So for me, being self-aware, it allows me to be creative, to test things out, to optimize the approach. Whereas when I'm feeling self-conscious, not only do I not get those creative thoughts, but when I do, I'm too scared to execute on them because of the negative consequences that may take place that my mind has sort of built out, So I think, it's a struggle for salespeople that are wanting to be as accountable as possible, right?
On that point, I wanted to share a quote that helped me kind of get through my journey as a sales. But I wanted to kind of give a little story first. So Tim, you wrote a post yesterday, I believe, saying the average attempts in cadence to reach a buyer for cold calling is 11.3, and for social selling it's 3. Now that got me thinking, right? Because if you've got to contact someone more, it's of course it's going to be frustrating because you keep reaching out. And then there was Adam's your comment of, okay, I'll just keep calling them. Now, it was quite interesting that yesterday I saw a statistic that was 50% of salespeople say they avoid being pushy, but 84% of buyers have had a negative experience due to pushy salespeople. Now, if you're not hitting your numbers or your targets, and you're trying to run around a bit like a rat trying to get kind of meetings booked and opportunities, you're going to be more pushy. I think that's a fact. I was for sure last year. I was more pushy, more direct. I'd send content that I thought would be relevant to them, but actually it wasn't. It pushed them further away. So a quote that I quite liked was, "You can't see a reflection in boiling water. When the water calms, clarity comes." Now, the reason that was so important for me was because when I'd get wound up, I would tend to send more messages, more direct messages, trying to get those meetings. When actually, if you relax and you calm down and you think about how you would like to try and get in front of this person in a more creative way, less direct, there's so many options to do that. It's liking and engaging in content. It's trying to find a topic on their profile that they enjoy, so that when I contact them, they're more likely to respond. So I think it's also, to Jordan's point, of also being self-aware, knowing that, okay, if I'm being stressed, let me just take some time to relax a little bit more and think about these creative ways I can get in front of these people, instead of letting that pressure kind of seep in, and then you are being more direct, and actually you're pushing yourself further away from your goal.
Yeah, here. I think you inspired Tim then. I saw the blog stance.
No, it's the tweets. It's the tweet.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's incredibly insightful, and I think actually everybody can see elements of that in themselves. You know, when the pressure is turned up, your work rate is turned up, and you have a panicked sort of behavior, don't you?
Yeah.
And you know, we see it in our own posts. You know, the posts that you do that get the most engagement and the most traction are posts that don't have a call to action at the end. They're posts that are just simply gifting something to your network. Here's a little bit of advice that I can give you. And the more that we try to follow that kind of absolutely. The more that we try to adopt that stance and kind of relax into it, because I think one of the mistakes that every organization makes with sales is that they assume that the buyer journey is the same as the seller journey. You know, so the seller journey is, I want to close this quarter, and the buyer journey is, I want to close at some point. And actually, it's the distance between these and the failure for the seller to acknowledge that. So, you know, I often kind of joke about this, that the company at which some of us on this call worked was famous for doing journey mapping. You know, but it was dressed up as customer journey mapping, and it was never customer journey mapping. It was always seller selling mapping. You know, here's the time we need to give you this bit of information to push you down this leg of the decision tree to arrive you at the place where we need you to be in order to spend money with us. It was never about helping empower and educate the buyer. And I think so often that's the case with sellers, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, all too often. You know, forecasting a deal that is nowhere near ready to be forecast because they've had a couple of interesting conversations with someone.
Or because your sales manager has told you that you need to be forecasting more stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Or the pipeline multiple needs to be 3x or 4x or 5x.
Pipeline multiple. Yes. You had something interesting to say on that today, didn't you, Tim?
I did, yeah. Well, I've been talking about it last week. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
And is it a valuable thing? Does it help sellers? Having a pipeline multiple that you're trying to achieve, does it help sellers and help them achieve and be more relaxed about things, or does it apply additional pressure?
I always saw it applied additional pressure and made the salesperson focus on the pipeline multiple and not closing deals.
Yeah, I agree, and I think unless there is that clearly defined, path to success, and the sales rep understands exactly what needs to be done to get the buyer, or to help the buyer navigate the buying process to the purchase, then it is a distraction. Because only once you know that, then the probability of where you're going to end up that quarter, that year, because it's a more accurate, truthful view of the world. And if you have that, then for me, pipeline multiple becomes more important, especially if you're qualifying, your qualification is accurate.
But I think, I just have every client, prospect, potential lead, whatever we want to call them, is actually different, right? So the person who's doing the buying, or the buying team that's doing the buying, they have a unique dynamic. They have a unique culture that they're working internally. So even though as a salesperson, I might have a standard view of how people consume my information in order to make a purchasing decision, that could actually be quite different with any given organization. And so if we look at I come from software, right? It's not unusual to have a 2-year selling cycle, right? So from the time this company first becomes aware of you, it takes them 2 years to know enough about you so that they can buy. Okay, so it's one thing to know, what do people need to know about me so they can buy? But at the same time, can I squeeze that for a small company that has a small decision-making team, that has budget available, that has maybe the CEO just makes decisions and they have a problem, they want to fix it now? They could meet me today and buy tomorrow, right? So my process looks different than if I know this company needs what I have. I'm going to nurture some leads at that company because I want people there to know who I am, but I don't anticipate that to close. But that, I guess what I'm getting to is that is the average of that really relevant, or is it more a permission to pay attention to what you're experiencing from a company and use your knowledge about how that can impact the funnel to project things? Because the company I was at was always let's go for deer, right? Deer are people who have the budget now, who want to move fast. They're agile. They want to make quick decisions, right? And so what you end up doing is trying to profile companies instead of build relationships with people. And then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes a deer takes 2 years to buy, right? So then it just sits in the funnel with a 30-day close expectation for 2 years. It wasn't a 30-day close expectation to begin with.
I think you need to know whether or not there's a need or there isn't a need. If there's a need, then it's likely there's a purchase process that's going to follow. And so it's a question of ensuring that the purchase criteria that's being defined for that purchase is aligned to your strengths. And that can be quite a quick process, even in software sales. But if there isn't a need, then I think it's a case of finding the person that's got enough influence within an organization to align on the problem that you've either helped them identify, or they've got an inkling that exists that they want to solve.
Or better still, the problem you've been able to cause for them, which you can then address.
Yeah.
Problem agitation.
That's called that's creating a compelling reason.
And
I think it's just when we deprioritize the activity of building those relationships over time with influential people in an organization because they're not buyers today. Let's just not even think about them. Let's hit the phones to even get rabbits, right, who will buy tiny things really fast. Like, where's the trade and how does that impact the mental health, right? Like, because I feel like chasing rabbits is like boiling water, right? That doesn't feel like chill and strategic. It feels different. So, and maybe that's like different things feel different for different people. I don't know. I'm kind of granola that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think people come first, and when you optimize the people, then you can optimize the process and those things. But without a focus on optimizing the people, just, I don't know.
Well, one of the things that I see here in the UK, one of the big changes that took place in sales is that there used to be a whole, in effect, you could do a sales apprenticeship. There was newspapers, and we used to get this free newspaper that came through the door every week. The Yellow Pages, and all these used to be places where you could go and you were taught a sales methodology, basically a way of contacting people cold, and you would go through a process. In effect, it was a black box. In effect, you were cranking a handle, and all of that is gone. So you had this pool of talent that you could call upon, who went through this in their early 20s, and you'd look at someone's CV and went, oh, they worked at Yellow Pages, then we must have this person because they've clearly got an understanding of sales as a process. And now what we're doing generally is, if you look at the average SDR, we're taking them out of university, throwing them into sales and saying, get on with it. And basically telling them to do something which everybody knows is broken, even though some people won't admit it. And it's like I have so much. I have sympathy because I understand the process, and I understand. But being thrown at that, but not being trained, is just a terrible situation for people to be in. And no wonder they're moving from job to job.
Telling them they're the hammer and everything that they look at is a nail.
Is a nail, yeah. And there just isn't that sales apprenticeship around anymore. And I think that until someone is successful, what people are doing in sales is they're finding their way rather than being shown it's actually a process.
Can that be replaced by a mentor, do you think? That sort of apprenticeship if you find the right mentor? I
think there's certainly onboarding way of doing it, that there is mentorship. And of course now, not exactly to counter your point, Tim, but there's the apprenticeship scheme now has been opened up in the UK as an alternative means of going off to university, which is more of a learning on the job approach. Now, I don't know, I haven't got details in terms of the sales apprenticeship and whether there is a bespoke program specifically related to sales. I'd imagine there probably is, yeah.
There is, sponsored by the ISP.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And I think that people miss out on the training, and mentoringship being different from training.
Yeah.
And I think what I see quite often with enablement is about teaching you a tool. I'm surprised Rob Durant isn't jumping in about enablement and onboarding and stuff, but it's still going back to, this is the responsibility of your employer to make you've been successful in the past, they've recruited you, it's their responsibility to keep making you successful going forward.
Yeah, that's a seismic shift, though, isn't it? In terms of how most organisations behave, particularly in sales. It seems from all of the salespeople that I talk to, it seems almost like it's contingent on them to manage their own development.
Of which I think that still plays a part, because I think as much as we like organisations to step up and do it, and it goes for any field that you happen to be in. I think if you want to be good in that field, you have to take
responsibility for that.
Absolutely, yeah. You can't just farm it out to somebody else. And it works even better if you've got an organisation standing behind you, going to support you through that process.
Yeah.
So I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to go back quickly to Jackie's question about like what we could do as salespeople if we're not getting this support at work and we come home. Any advice from the crew on like how we can de-stress so that we can still be a human at home?
Great if you've got some sounding board at home, you know, friend, family, partner who you can kind of share stuff with, and get some of that offloaded. Thinking about going out and doing other things, you know, exercise, other activities. So those would be my kind of quick fire things to put into the pot.
Yeah.
And if you need peeps to chat with it about, you got a whole bunch of them right here. I'm sure any of us would be happy to chat about it on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. So thank you to everybody. Tim had to drop because he had another session that he was running. So thank you to everyone on the panel. Thank you to everyone in the audience. A very interesting topic, and one that definitely needs to be addressed, I think. So have a great weekend. For those of you in the UK, have a great long weekend. And we'll see you all next week on the Digital Download, the longest running weekly talk show on LinkedIn Live.